Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Even though you are the most powerful being, this act does not suit you because your character is followed for spiritual improvement by people in general. Purport. It is said that a supremely powerful living entity can do anything and everything he likes, and such acts do not affect him in any way. For example, the sun, the most powerful fiery planet in the universe, can evaporate water from anywhere and still remain as powerful. The sun evaporates water from filthy places and yet is not infected with the quality of the filth. Similarly, Brahma remains unimpeachable in all conditions. But still, since he is the spiritual master of all living entities, his behavior and character should be so ideal that people will follow such sublime behavior and derive the highest spiritual benefit. Therefore, he should not have acted as he did. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanditamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sita Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Panchatat Fatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhakta Avataram Bhakta Kyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Kadamakhanana Swaminiti Namine Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Gurudasa Jayadvaita Swaminiti Namine Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pasatyadeshatarine. So I first of all want to seek blessings from everyone in this room. You're all my seniors. So please bless me that I can say something that will be pleasing to Krishna and purifying and beneficial to all of us. So in the context of where we're reading in Srimad Bhagavatam, we're at Brahma's creation. In this chapter, he's trying to populate the universe. So he created the 4 Kumaras, but they didn't want to cooperate in populating the universe. They wanted to remain aloof. And then he got so angry that from his anger, Lord Shiva emerged, and he created population that was destroying everything that Brahma had just created. So Brahma said, "Stop. Your time is not now. Just engage in penance and austerities for now." And then in the last few verses, Brahma created different personalities: Daksha, Narada, Kardama Muni, Bhrigu Muni, all kinds of great saintly personalities. And then he created religion, irreligion, lust, sinful desires, sinful activities, greed, and anger. And then in the last few verses, we hear about how Brahma created Vak, his daughter, and then developed the mentality of wanting to enjoy with her. And even though he was only attracted in the mind and didn't actually physically do anything, the situation is very perplexing and is very difficult to speak about. We hear throughout this canto and throughout the Bhagavatam about Lord Brahma's greatness. He is the first living entity. He's got so much power that he's creating. How could he develop this mentality? And in previous verses, we see that his own sons are asking this very question: how could you develop such a mentality? And in the purport, it's interesting because Srila Prabhupada said, he gave a hint. He said that the sons were asking, but they knew that there must be some purpose behind it. Otherwise, Brahma would not have committed such a mistake. It's interesting because when we commit mistakes, most of the time there's no purpose behind it. Sometimes it may benefit other people from learning what not to do, but generally it's just our own foolishness. But the sons of Brahma know that he's such a great personality that, of course, there must be a purpose. And Srila Prabhupada hints at the purpose in the previous verse, or a few verses back, saying that it might be that Brahma wanted to warn his subordinates about human frailties in their dealings with women. And in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Sanatana Goswami gives the same kind of idea that sometimes great personalities commit mistakes just to call our attention to mistakes that we can also commit and what results can come. And therefore, these mistakes are for our benefit. If a great personality like Lord Brahma could fall prey to Maya in the form of woman, then what to speak of us regular people? The lesson, as we've heard in the last few classes this week, that we should be very cautious in our dealings between men and women. And there's this very nice verse in the end of third canto that says, amongst all kinds of living entities begotten by Brahma, namely men, demigods, and animals, none but the sage Narayan is immune to the attraction of Maya in the form of woman. So this is referring to Narayan Rishi. And there's that pastime where Narayan Rishi, who's actually an incarnation of the Lord himself, is performing austerities, and Lord Indra gets very threatened because his position might be stolen or usurped, as he's always anxious for his position. So he decides to bewilder Narayan Rishi by sending heavenly celestial woman to distract him from his meditation. But Narayan Rishi was not distracted, as we can see. He's the only living entity that is not going to be bewildered by a woman in this way. And he very quickly manifested many more beautiful women, unlimited more beautiful women. And everyone was perplexed, and they realized he's not the same as everyone else. And then Lord Indra realized his mistake and was very quickly apologetic. So the lesson is, unless we're Narayan, we should be very careful. And in a few places, Srila Prabhupada was speaking about this, the dangers of this unrestricted association between men and women. And this verse was quoted a few days ago from 9th canto, spoken by King Yayati. Matra svashra duhitrava navi viktas sano bhavet balavan indriya gramo vidvam sam apikarshati. One should not allow oneself to sit on the same seat even with one's own mother, sister, or daughter. For the senses are so strong that even though one is very advanced in knowledge, he may be attracted by sex. And in Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, the devotees were talking about this verse. And actually they were talking about how in India, men and women, even married couples, have separate quarters because that's how careful they are. In India, where Vedic culture is so strongly upheld, there's so much care given to this point. And so the devotees were talking to Srila Prabhupada about, keeping the men and women in separate residences. And Prabhupada said, yes, that is good. The example is that butter and fire should be kept as far apart as possible. So butter being the man and fire being the woman. And he quotes this verse, and he says that people think that one would actually not be attracted to their own daughter or sister or mother. But the Shastra says no, there is actually a possibility. And it was mentioned yesterday that now in Kali Yuga, this is happening. We see it, even though in the Shastra it was like a far-fetched idea. And Prabhupada said, people may think this is the advice for a 10th class rascal. But no, the verse is saying that even a first-class learned person may be attracted. So The senses are so strong that they can mislead even the most learned scholar. And Prabhupada said, Lord Brahma was attracted to his daughter. Just see, there's the example. Lord Shiva was attracted by the Mohini Murti. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, even if I see a wooden woman, I become attracted. Prabhupada laughed. He is giving this information to teach us that it is possible. So that's the point of all of this. And in later verses, the result of this lust is given. It said that Brahma actually had to give up his body because of his lust. And it's because his sons were imploring him, why are you doing this? And then he realized, okay, I have to give up my body. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that actually Brahma has such a fabulously long duration of life, but because of lust, he had to give up his body, and therefore lust decreases the duration of our lives. And and he says it decreases also blessings, opulence, anything positive, because all of that is decreased by sinful activities. And he's saying the most dangerous type of sinful activity is unrestricted sex. And I read this article online by Chaitanya Chandra Prabhu about how Brahma could actually give up his body and then immediately continue. And it said that the bodies, as we progress higher and higher in the universe, the bodies get more and more refined and subtle. So first, our bodies are made of earth largely, but as you go higher and higher, there's bodies of water, fire, air, ether. And eventually in Satya Loka, there's no actual gross body. It's just subtle body, mind, intelligence, and false ego. And then, and therefore, they have bodies that it's their subtle body takes a form through which they can act. So for Brahma, his body was just formed by his consciousness. And because he developed a lusty consciousness, then he developed a body for that consciousness. But immediately when he decided to give up that consciousness, then he gave up that form, and therefore he changed his body. So his body was different. But it's really just his consciousness. And that's why he could continue after that. And it said that his body became the fog of darkness that spreads everywhere. And this represents ignorance. It said that this fog of darkness can only be counteracted by the sun. So in the same way, the only thing that can counteract ignorance, sinful life, is taking shelter of the sun like Supreme Lord, the one who gives light to everyone. The second lesson that we can learn from this pastime, because Lord Brahma is teaching us a lot, is that the Lord is actually very forgiving, which is sometimes I think we overlook that in this pastime. We're taking the lesson that we have to be very careful, but if we look at what happens afterwards, it says that the Lord is very forgiving, and that immediately after that, he kept Lord Brahma's reputation intact. He didn't say, okay, you had a lusty thought, and therefore you cannot be leader of the universe anymore, the first living being. And this verse is quoted later. One who has thus given up all other engagements and has taken full shelter at the lotus feet of Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is very dear to the Lord. Indeed, if such a surrendered soul accidentally commits some sinful activity, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is seated within everyone's heart, immediately takes away the reaction to such sin. So, whatever mistakes we make, the Lord is actually very forgiving and merciful. And we saw Srila Prabhupada display that and be a living embodiment of that with his mood and mentality and so many of his own disciples, if they ever made mistakes. And in a letter to Himavati, Himavati Mataji was asking Prabhupada about this. How can Lord Shiva be bewildered? How can Lord Brahma be bewildered? And Prabhupada's response was basically, just because Lord Shiva was agitated does not mean that we should judge him or think he's fallen or degraded. And the same for Lord Brahma. He said we should never think of any devotee like that. Such apparent falling is without any influence to such advanced devotees. And a neophyte should be very careful. We should actually not discuss about such great devotees' apparent fall downs. And that's why he said, Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, they are highly elevated devotees, and we should not criticize their behavior, even though it appears to be against the rules. And we see that that was Prabhupada's mood whenever his own disciples made mistakes. He didn't want people to talk about it and to make it worse. He wanted the fact that they're devotees to be honored. And so it's a lesson to us, for ourselves, for everyone around us, whatever big or small mistake that's made, we can remember the compassion and mercy of Srila Prabhupada and Krishna. And also to understand that the only real way to overcome lust is to surrender to Krishna. This purport is speaking about, some pure devotees who can do literally anything and everything and not be affected. And in the scripture we have examples of that, like Ramananda Rai. He is someone that, because of his purity of devotion and his exalted behavior, just exalted qualities, he's actually not affected by material dealings. So it said in Chaitanya Charitamrita that Ramananda Rai wrote this play called the Jagannath Vallabha Nataka, and he actually engaged 2 young, beautiful girls in performing the play. And they were called the Devi Dasis, and he personally taught them how to dance, how to dress up. He personally rubbed oil on their bodies and bathed them, dressed them, decorated their bodies. And he was not affected at all. Who can do this? He was living completely in his pure identity of being an assistant to the gopis. So he saw these 2 young women as the gopis, and he was their assistant, and therefore he was acting in that fully transcendental relationship. When Lord Chaitanya was talking about him, he said, I am a sannyasi, and I certainly consider myself renounced, but what to speak of seeing a woman? If I even hear the name of a woman, I feel changes in my mind and body. Therefore, who could remain unmoved by the sight of a woman? It is very difficult. His mind is as steady as wood or stone, speaking about Ramananda Rai. Indeed, it is wonderful that even when he touches such young girls, his mind never changes. The authority for such acts is the prerogative of Ramananda Rai alone. For I can understand that his body is not material, but has been completely transformed into a spiritual entity. He alone and no one else can understand the position of his mind. So Lord Chaitanya is basically saying, don't try this at home. Ramananda Rai is on a different level. He is the type of devotee that Prabhupada is speaking about. And then we have another devotee in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, Srila Haridas Thakur, who was meditating and chanting peacefully at Benopal. And Ramachandra Khan was envious and therefore wanted to bewilder him again. And then he sent the prostitute Lakshahira to try to bewilder Haridas Thakur. But not only was Haridas Thakur not bewildered at all because he was completely absorbed in chanting the holy names, but he managed to give her pure love of God also. So that's something we cannot imitate, because not only was he chanting 300,000 names per day, but she also started chanting 300,000 names per day. His Holiness Kadamba Kandana Maharaj would often reflect that she had to have developed love of God, because you cannot chant 300 names a day if you do not have love of Godhead. So that's another personality we actually cannot imitate. For us, we have to follow what's said here, that no matter what level we're on, we have to display ideal behavior. Lord Brahma is being told that you are the spiritual master of the universe. Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda ki jai. Shri Shri Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman ki jai. Shri Shri Gaurnitai ki jai. You are the spiritual master of the universe, and therefore your example is followed. So you need to be of ideal behavior and character. And His Holiness Kirambakana Maharaj used to say that it's actually not just people in leadership positions who are leaders and therefore need to have ideal character. In our Sankirtan movement, every single person is a leader in some way. The Sankirtan devotees are leaders. The teachers are leaders. The people working in the corporate world are leaders. Parents are leaders. Because everyone is being an advertisement for Krishna consciousness in the world somewhere. And therefore, it's not just for the people with titles that have to have ideal behavior. We all have to strive to have ideal behavior. For ideal behavior, we can start by looking at Bhagavad Gita, the qualities of a Brahmana, samadhamas tapasocham, shantir arjavam evacha, jnanam vijnanam astikyam, brahma karma svabhavajam. Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, and religiousness. These are the natural qualities by which the Brahmanas work. If we can start there, then we have a good chance of developing ideal character. And then that can be the best preaching we can do, through inspiration. Because our association will be so inspiring that everybody will want to come and take our association and take the message that we're giving them, which is Krishna consciousness. And that is actually the role of every devotee in our movement, to try and become an inspiration. So we should take this message that's not just for Lord Brahma, it's for all of us. Because people will follow us in general. And in our personal life, we can look no further than Srila Prabhupada as our ideal example of behavior and character. He has it all: purity, compassion, tolerance, humility, boldness, confidence, selflessness. Srila Prabhupada brought the spiritual reality to us. And ultimately, the only way we can develop ideal character is by being empowered by someone who's ideal. So on our own endeavor, it will not be possible. But if we allow ourselves to be empowered by Srila Prabhupada, then we can carry forth his message. I say allow ourselves because sometimes the one thing that's standing in the way from empowerment is that we're not surrendering. If we fully surrender to Guru and Krishna, and we can become a channel through which the mercy flows from Krishna, through Guru, through us, to everyone else. But it requires that we put our own individual personal desires and feelings aside and just surrender fully to Krishna, to Krishna's will, to Srila Prabhupada's desire. And I wanted to read a very inspiring offering by His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami about how Srila Prabhupada is fully empowered. It really expresses the message thoroughly about Prabhupada's empowerment by the previous acharyas. And I'm sure many have already heard it, but I feel like I can hear this every day because it's so inspiring. It's called Paramahamsa Thakur. And it was written in the form of a play. And so it starts off, maybe there's not enough time to go through everything, but it starts off setting the scene of how chanting of the holy name is the religious process of this age, and therefore a true acharya is one who's going to spread that all around and share the message of Krishna all around. And about how Advaita Acharya came when religious principles seemed to have been declining and people there was cheating religion. So Advaita Acharya came and he called Lord Chaitanya. So there's verses quoted about how he came and he roared and he worshipped Saligram Shila with Tulsi and Ganga water to summon the Lord. And then it speaks about how Lord Chaitanya came and said, "My name is Vishvambar," and that means one who maintains the entire universe. But how can I live up to my name if I'm not giving everyone pure love of Krishna? So then he decided now he's going to spread the fruits of love of Godhead. He's the gardener and he's going to share the fruits of love of Godhead. But How can he personally distribute all these fruits? So all these verses are from Chaitanya Charitamrita. So then before the play actually starts, it says, "Therefore I order every man within this universe to accept this Krishna consciousness movement and distribute it everywhere. If the fruits are distributed all over the world, my reputation as a pious man will be known everywhere, and thus all people will glorify my name with great pleasure." So now the play actually starts. Hearing the Lord's words, his followers worked with unlimited enthusiasm. Under the Lord's direction, they broke open the storehouse of love of God and distributed the fruits without consideration of who was fit or unfit to receive them. They personally ate the fruit and induced whomever they met to do the same. But they met with opposition. Kali Yuga was progressing. Time passed, and the number of conditioned souls evading the Lord's net of mercy increased. As the 19th century headed to a close, the brilliant moonbeams of Lord Chaitanya's mercy seemed all but eclipsed by the sinister Kali. Numerous Sahajya groups proliferated, shadows of the glorious Sankirtan parties of the past. Only the appearance of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur saved the situation. He re-established Lord Chaitanya's movement, then placed it in the hands of his faithful son, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, who expanded it to every corner of India. Alas, no sooner had these two empowered persons left this earthly world than the mission again faltered. Their efforts to organize a dynamic movement were nearly undone. Instead of working in a united way, their followers split into factions and the movement lost its momentum. Kali's followers rejoiced. Having created 2 world wars, they seized control of the world and plundered her resources. Even India, the bastion of religion, discarded her spiritual destiny in favor of temporal objectives. As the materialists gained strength, the devotees seemed to lose theirs. The unconquerable forward march of Srila Saraswati Thakur's legions ground to a halt, jeopardizing the legacy of Srila Bhaktivinoda. Timely ringing of the temple bells and a full belly became the new measure of success. Lord Chaitanya's prophecy of a worldwide Sankirtan movement seemed no more than a wishful dream, the fanciful words of some medieval poet. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sat amongst his closest associates, appearing like a full moon amidst a starry firmament. He had stopped their dance of ecstasy to consider the plight of his Sankirtan movement. They heard Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's report of their mission's stagnation. The Lord's eyes welled with tears. He had come to benefit the whole world, not just to change a few. Srila Bhaktivinoda interjected, "You have made so many disciples. Will none dare cross the ocean?" Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, "A few have, but they returned unsuccessful. The Yavanas are in control everywhere, even in India." Tears washed the Lord's golden cheeks. He turned to Namacharya Haridas Thakur and said, "My dear Haridas, what about your promise? You said the holy name would deliver everyone. Now it seems not even a semblance of the holy name remains." Haridas stared downcast as all the Lord's associates felt the burden of his concern. Haridas Thakur finally took courage and said, "My Lord, you know everything, so what can we say? Although you are the master of all, you willingly place yourself under your Yoga Maya potency, who causes forgetfulness. With this apparent human frailty, you draw us even closer. My dear Lord, everyone knows you recently emptied the universe by delivering all the conditioned souls, and again you filled it up. If you like, you can easily deliver the conditioned souls time after time. But you prefer to have your devotee take the credit by performing this miraculous task. My Lord, may I therefore remind you that some time ago, knowing Kali's influence would spread, you dispatched your dearest devotee, the servant of Saraswati Goswami, to earth. He is busy preparing himself at that very place where Srila Rupa Goswami once performed his bhajan. My Lord, surely you know this, and so does Rupa Goswami. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who predicted his coming, and of course his son Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, are also well aware. Perhaps due to humility, none will remind you. My Lord, may your anxiety be vanquished, for the deliverance of the world is near at hand. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu turned to Rupa Goswami and said, "What do you know of this?" Rupa Goswami said, "My Lord, that which Haridas Thakur has said is true. He is speaking of Sri Abhay Charanaravinda, Bhaktivedanta Swami, the humble servant and true follower of Srimad Saraswati Goswami. Night and day, he tirelessly translates Srimad Bhagavatam into the language of the Yavanas." The Lord's imploring glance induced Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati to finally speak. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, "He is following the instruction I gave him at our first meeting. I told him to preach your Lordship's message all over the world. I repeated this to him at Radhakund 10 years later and reconfirmed it by letter just before my departure. That order is now ripe for fulfillment. But my Lord knows all of this, for it is you who actually made all the arrangements. It was you who arranged his birth in a pure aristocratic Vaishnava family. By the time you sent him to me, his father, Gaur Mohan De, had already impressed upon him all the essential elements of your mission. I only needed to stress the importance of publishing literature and to command him to spread your movement worldwide. Then your Lordship did what you alone can do. Though fortune and happiness were his destiny, you made his business fail and his family attachments evaporate. Sensing your Lordship's intention, I appeared repeatedly in his dreams and ordered him to take sannyas. Now humanity is his family and its resources are his inherited wealth. He is fearlessly reposed at your lotus feet and awaits your final command." Waves of enthusiasm swept away the Lord's anxiety. He turned to Lord Nityananda and embraced him strongly. Sri Nityananda Ram at once jumped up and began to dance so forcefully that the ground beneath his lotus feet shook. Others rose to join, but Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu bade them be patient while he calmed his brother's ecstasy. When Lord Nityananda again became peaceful, Lord Chaitanya asked him to sit beside him. Then, looking at his circle of intimate associates, the Lord requested each to bestow their unconditional mercy upon the best servant of Saraswati Goswami. Lord Chaitanya called first upon Sri Advaita Acharya, saying that the Acharya was such a great personality that Lord Krishna would surely fulfill his prayers. They exalted Sri Advaita, the incarnation of both Lord Mahavishnu and Lord Shiva, and the shelter for all conditioned souls, offered the first benediction. Advaita Acharya said, "My Lord, since you are not scheduled to appear again until Brahma's next day, countless jivas will have to suffer endless births awaiting your next appearance. I cannot bear this. Therefore, I pray that you now empower Saraswati Goswami's able disciple to deliver them on your behalf." All the assembled devotees roared with approval. The Lord looked lovingly at Sri Gadadhar Pandit, his personified pleasure potency. Sri Gadadhar Pandit said, "Who can understand the Lord's and his devotees' reciprocal exchanges? When old age prevented my worship of beloved Gopinath, he sat down to receive my garlands and other services. Those who claim the deity is stone are themselves stone-hearted. May my Lord melt the hearts of those stone-like jivas by your loving dealings with Sri Abhay Charanaravinda." Then the Lord turned to Srivas Thakur, the incarnation of Sri Narad Muni. Srivas Thakur said, "As you have enabled me to travel everywhere to preach your glories, please give him the same facility. Give him the key to every city of the world and to each and every heart that dwells therein." The circle of confidential associates beamed with joy. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "But Acharya, you are expert in the 6 philosophies. What boon will you grant?" Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya confidently and joyfully said that he drive impersonalism and voidism from the face of this earth. Sri Ramananda Rai offered his blessings next. "May you speak through his lips as you spoke through mine. May you allow him to reveal the most confidential truth concerning the spontaneous devotional service of the residents of Vrindavan." The Lord turned to Thakur Haridas and said, "Namacharya, your blessing is most important of all. Which boon will you bestow on my fearless servitor?" Haridas Thakur replied without hesitation, the power to give your pure holy name to everyone, no matter how lowly or fallen they may be. Everyone said, Haribol, Haribol. Lord Chaitanya surveyed his dearest followers, the 6 Goswamis. Srila Sanatana Goswami was the first to speak. He said, he will carry Vrindavan Dham wherever he goes. He will establish the standard behavior of a Vaishnava by his words and deeds. Next, Srila Rupa Goswami promised, his Sankirtan activities will churn the ocean of bhakti, producing a nectarian beverage which will intoxicate the entire world. Then Srila Raghunath Bhatta Goswami said, Srimad Bhagavatam is our life and soul. We never tire of hearing its narration. When I recite the Bhagavatam, Sri Rupa and Sri Sanatan derive such pleasure that they insist I sing every verse in 3 different tunes. Therefore, when Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami causes the Bhagavatam to be sung in every language of the world, who can imagine how much pleasure it will give the Lord and his associates? Srila Raghunath Das Goswami said, my Lord, you saved me from the dark well of household life, but your departure left me burning in the fire of separation. Since you also delivered Bhaktivedanta Swami in much the same way, may that same bittersweet mood of separation for your lotus feet always burn within his heart as well. Srila Jiva Goswami said, his books will establish the philosophy of Achintya Beda Beda Tattva as the preeminent philosophical position. Srila Gopal Bhatta Goswami said, he will establish the worship of Sri Vigraha on every continent, in every nation, and in every town and village of the world. After hearing from the 6 Goswamis, the Lord turned to the best of poets. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami said, may he arrange to have your Lordship's pastimes, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, glorified in every human language of the world. Lord Chaitanya looked at the golden form of Srila Narottam Das Thakur, the embodiment of his prema, and said, Narottam, what blessing will you bestow? Narottam Das Thakur vowed, love for your lotus feet and for the lotus feet of the divine couple will color his thoughts, words, and deeds. He will spread the Sankirtan movement with the same energy with which you empowered Srinivasacharya, Shamananda Prabhu, and myself. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was seated by Lord Chaitanya's side, and he said, Abhay Charana Ravinda has been studying my 10th canto Bhagavatam commentary for decades, and the wonderful pastimes of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna are constantly appearing in his heart. May his presentation of these pastimes for the general populace be so suitable that it removes the disease of lust which now affects their hearts. Srila Baladev Vidyabhusan said, as Lord Govinda Dev dictated my Vedanta Sutra commentary, may the Lord similarly sit by his side and dictate his Bhaktivedanta purports. Then Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ensured that Saraswati Goswami's disciple would always maintain the infinite humility required to serve the Vaishnavas. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who had previously rescued the mission single-handedly, prayed, may my great-grand disciple be granted the strength and skill to organize the Sankirtan movement on a worldwide scale. Srila Gaura Das Babaji Maharaj blessed his foremost grand disciple with his own spirit of renunciation, born out of his unlimited love for Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. He blessed him to remain detached even amidst unlimited opulence. At last, after everyone had spoken, Lord Chaitanya turned to Sri Nityananda Prabhu. He said, you are my elder brother, and I fully depend on you. You are the spiritual master of all the worlds and the upholder of all the universes. The blessings which these confidential associates have bestowed are beyond any mortal person's ability to hold. Never before has such an assembly of personalities bestowed such unlimited blessings upon a single person. Now I am asking you to give the servant of Saraswati Goswami the required strength to sustain these blessings, for without your empowerment, it will be impossible. Nityananda Prabhu smiled broadly and then nodded his head affirmatively, and everyone roared, Haribol, Haribol. Lord Nityananda said, I will infuse his mission with my own personal energy. I will personally support his temples, ashrams, conveyances, in fact, every aspect of his and his followers' mission. Due to my presence, nothing will check the progress of this movement. The joyous response to Sri Nityananda's decree was deafening. The august assembly appeared to have lost their gravity. As they tried to estimate the effect of Lord Nityananda's mercy, their minds became boggled. Some cried, others laughed, and pandemonium would have broken out had Lord Chaitanya not suddenly noticed Sri Swarup Damodar Goswami. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "Oh, you have escaped without giving a blessing." The Lord smiled at his secretary's silence. "Come now, tell us, what will it be?" Swarup Damodar Goswami, whose transcendental intelligence was no less than that of the Lord, would not be drawn in. He said, "When Nityananda Prabhu has made such a promise, there is nothing more for anyone to do. No, I am not holding back, but someone amongst us is." Everyone looked puzzled, for they had all given their boons. They had no idea who he was referring to. Then Advaita Acharya understood, and he said, "My Lord, you have proven once again your supreme intelligence. That great person Swarup Damodar is referring to is none other than you. You have made us each give our blessings, except for yourself. What value are our blessings if you don't add yours?" Everyone waited with bated breath to hear the Lord's response. The Lord remained silent, contemplating the Acharya's words. Then at last, he who is ever bound to his devotees' words soberly declared, "So be it. I shall personally enter the heart of my dearest devotee and unfailingly guide his every thought, word, and deed. My mission to bestow Prema Bhakti through the Sankirtan movement will thus be fulfilled." With this promise, Lord Chaitanya sealed destiny. It was more than the devotees could tolerate. Led by the indomitable Lord Nityananda, they sprang up with unbounded joy and began a performance of Sankirtan, whose vibrations reached the far corners of the universe. Accompanied by their associate servants and confidential companions, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda danced with such abandon that the storehouse of love of God broke open, and the nectar liquid of Prema Bhakti once again began to flood the universe. The ship Jaladuta, tossed by the Atlantic's waves, seemed to sway to the rhythmic kirtan of Lord Gauranga and his associates. On board, Sri Srimad Abhaycharan Bhaktivedanta Swami, the recipient of the rarest mercy ever bestowed, wrote the following poem. Srila Prabhupada writes, "Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who is very dear to Lord Gauranga, the son of Mother Sachi, is unparalleled in his service to the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna. He is the great saintly spiritual master who bestows intense devotion to Krishna at different places throughout the world. By his strong desire, the holy name of Lord Gauranga will spread throughout all the countries of the Western world. In all the cities, towns, and villages on the earth, from all the oceans, seas, rivers, and springs, everyone will chant the holy name of Krishna. As the vast mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu conquers all directions, a flood of transcendental ecstasy will certainly cover the land. When all the sinful, miserable living entities become happy, the Vaishnava's desire is then fulfilled. Although my Guru Maharaj ordered me to accomplish this mission, I am not worthy or fit to do it. I am very fallen and insignificant. Therefore, O Lord, now I am begging for your mercy so that I may become worthy, for you are the wisest and most experienced of all." The kirtan of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates continued on and on without end. The Jaladuta plied forward until it reached Boston Harbor. As Sri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami's lotus feet touched western soil for the first time, he prayed, "O Lord, I am just like a puppet in your hands. So if you have brought me here to dance, then make me dance, O Lord, make me dance as you like." Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanande. Haribol. So that was just the meditation of Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and it's actually his vision. It's not just a play, it's his transcendental vision of the empowerment that Srila Prabhupada carries. So we are plugged in. We just have to plug into this mercy, and then we can do things that we've never thought possible for us. So I'll end there. If there's any, because I know I've gone way over, but if there's any comments or reflections or corrections, or if there's questions, we can all discuss, because I'm not qualified to answer.
Thank you, Mataji. So this topic on sex is like, it's so heavy in here, so heavy. I'm coming from a tradition where I've never heard about, I went to church for years, never once heard the word sex. It's like, you know, I don't know, suppressed or something. But here it's like you can't stop talking about it. So I think we have to make it relevant as well, because we don't want the young people to feel uncomfortable with attraction. You know what I mean? For the opposite sex. We must be careful about this and make it very healthy discussions. Like, it's not so much the attraction, because it's natural, but just put in their minds that healthy sex, not healthy sex, that's for grihastas, but sexual purity is a strength. And maybe we should focus a little bit more on that, and how it's empowering, physically, spiritually, mentally. So, because we don't want them to feel like they're freaks, because they feel attraction for. So I just think we should temper this carefully. Yes, it's true. If people say that when they come to the Hare Krishna movement, why are we always talking about sex? I think Prabhupada was very honest. He's known for his honesty, that he brings about. He spoke about the uncomfortable topics, like death. Why are we always talking about death? Most people are not talking about death. So he was honest and open with it. But now it's for the preacher to decide how they are going to present it to the outside world. And like you say, that in some cultures it's completely normal. Kadambakananda Maharaj gave this example that he was at a university program and somebody asked him this question, like, what is the problem with sex? I have 10 boyfriends, she said that. And then he just frankly said, well, why don't you just have one boyfriend, get married, and have 10 kids? So he was trying to get the message across of purifying ourselves. And we know what Prabhupada said, that sex life within Grihastha ashram is fine for the procreation of children. And there it has a purpose. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said he would have 100 children. He'd have sex 100 times if he knew he was going to have 100 Krishna-conscious children. So it's not sex itself, it's when it's misused. So, yeah, I think the preacher will have to know how to share it in a way that people will not feel attacked and that people will actually will feel empowered. I think talking about the benefits of, like you said, purity, that does more, actually. And many people, even outside of Krishna consciousness, if they attempt celibacy for a period of time, they will say that it was freeing the mind. They reach levels of consciousness, of health, just from a material perspective, that they hadn't experienced before. So that's one approach to do it. Oh.
Thank you for an amazing class. I really liked how you were stressing the importance of developing character. I wanted to share what I was reading in the 4th canto of the Bhagavatam when Lord Krishna appeared to Prithu Maharaj after he was trying to perform the sacrifices, the 99 sacrifices, and Indra kept on stealing the horse. And yeah, he was getting really angry, but then Lord Brahma came and told him to just leave it, just be satisfied with 99 sacrifices and don't be angry with Indra. So then Prithu Maharaj, he agreed. And so he just left it at that, and he forgave Indra. And then Vishnu appeared, and he said, I'm very satisfied with your good behavior and your character. That I'm not so much pleased with doing, so many great sacrifices or austerities, but what really pleases me is your behavior and your good character. And so I thought that was a very nice point, as you rightly mentioned, that this is what pleases Krishna the most. Sometimes people think that, this is my service, and whoever gets in the way, I have the right to, do whatever to them. But this is not actually what pleasing to Krishna. It's not, how much great service we do, but rather our behavior to his devotees. And also I wanted to ask a question, because, you were talking about how Prabhupada often, he didn't want to talk about the faults of his devotees, but sometimes it might be also necessary to point them out to protect others, as seems that Maitreya also felt it was his duty to mention the mistake of Lord Brahma. So I wondered how we can balance this, how we can understand where to point out the faults and where not to.
That's a very good question, very interesting. I've heard some senior devotees say that if it is one's duty, then one should do it. If someone is a manager in some capacity, then they will have to know, okay, who's allowed and who's not allowed to do different things. Unfortunately, we've had fall downs by senior devotees, and therefore there's certain scope that they're able to function in, and then certain scope that they're not. And therefore the leaders, the managers, people in that responsible position have to decide, okay, we either have to limit the person, or we have to let others know for their own protection so that they can understand where the person is at. So it comes from having that role of responsibility. And then in personal conversations, just for ourselves, not to judge. There's a difference between just saying something for informational purposes, if it's going to help someone understand the context of a situation, or versus just gossiping and criticizing and pointing out how low someone is. So when Prabhupada was saying that, it's like if we're asking, how can Brahma do this? He's the head of the sampradaya. It's also like etiquette that Prabhupada is not going to himself criticize the head of our sampradaya. But for information, he explained to his disciples, yes, this happened, and lust is very strong, material energy is very strong, and we should learn the lesson. But he's not going to go on and say, how can this happen? Yes, he's very fallen, we cannot trust him, all of those things, because we see that Prabhupada himself reinstated so many devotees who had fallen, and Lord Krishna has reinstated Lord Brahma, who had that slight fall down.
Hare Krishna, thank you. So just following on from that, and one of the things you mentioned in the class was about how Krishna forgave Brahma. In that same purport where he talks about that forgiveness, which is verse 34, I'm just trying to understand how to reconcile it, because he says, Brahma is powerful by dint of his, in the purport it says, Brahma is powerful by dint of his devotional service unto the Lord, and the Lord is always ready to forgive his devotee if by chance he falls down from the noble path of devotional service. But then at the end of the purport, Srila Prabhupada also says, Brahma was saved by the mercy of the Lord with a little punishment, but by the grace of the Lord he did not lose his prestige as the great Brahma. So we speak about forgiveness, but then we also see that Krishna had punished Brahma. So how do we reconcile the two? Because they seem two opposites.
That's interesting. I think we try to see the Lord's punishment even as something that benefits us. So, like in the case of Chota Haridas and Lord Chaitanya, many will say, oh, but Lord Chaitanya was not merciful. He did not forgive Chota Haridas. Because Chota Haridas, all he did was, think and look at someone in a lusty way. And Lord Chaitanya detected it and said no. But in that circumstance, he was teaching the strictness that sannyasis need to have. That was the purpose of his strictness, of his lack of mercy, as we call it. But also, in the story it says how the devotees were begging Lord Chaitanya. He said, Chota Haridas should not come and see me ever again. And the devotees were begging him, please let him come, let him come. Paramananda Puri came and said, please, my Lord, let him come. And Paramananda Puri is the godbrother of Ishvara Puri, the godbrother of Lord Chaitanya's spiritual master. So he's in a senior position technically, but he was begging the Lord, and the Lord said, I will leave. I will not stay if everyone keeps asking me. So then they stopped, and a whole year had passed, and Chota Haridas could not have the mercy of the Lord. And we hear in other stories of how, devotees patiently waited, like Mukunda Datta, and they were allowed back into the association of the Lord. But Chota Haridas was not. A whole year had passed, and he was observing the Lord from a distance, and then he just decided to give up his life because he cannot bear the separation from the Lord. But after that, it said that he came in a ghost body, and he was singing to the Lord. And the Lord accepted his service. The Lord knew that Chota Haridas was there singing, and he's accepting the service. And when the devotees eventually found out that because Chota Haridas disappeared, no one knew where he was, and then they realized, he must have left his body. And then they heard the news that he left his body. And then they were hearing him sing themselves, and then they said, this must be Chota Haridas coming back as a ghost to serve the Lord. And he got to serve the Lord in that way. Lord Chaitanya accepted it. And it said, who can understand the mind of Lord Chaitanya? At the end of that chapter, like, who can understand his pastimes? So externally, it seemed like he never gave the mercy because he never allowed Chota Haridas back in his association. And it seems like that, but he actually did, just in a different body. This is another example of how lust diminishes the duration of life. He took away, he didn't want that body that was lusty, but he accepted Chota Haridas back. And so the Lord's mercy is always there, just not in the way that we may understand. So in this example, he did punish him, but that was mercy, and therefore, and then he reinstated him. So it's the punishment is the mercy, it seems, and that is that forgiveness.
Thank you. So what I'm taking away from that is that love, that care that the Lord has can come in different forms. It doesn't just come in that form of forgiveness or kindness or compassion. It can come in different forms as well.
Yeah. I think we've gone way over, so I'm going to end. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanande Haribol.